Okay, so I'm just going to review quickly. I want to get virtualization working on our server 2012 server. The first thing we need to do is configure the virtual machine, the server itself. In this case, I've already changed the memory up to 4 gigs. You can go higher if you want. From the default 2 gigs, that gives enough a little bit room to work with at least one virtual machine. In addition to that, underneath the processor, if I click on virtual machine settings, I can click on processor, and these are off by default, so I want to turn these on to enable the processor to use the virtualization capacities of the processor. This is real life. Every machine that I've ever purchased, even server class servers, virtualization has been turned off in BIOS. The third thing, which is specific to our environment, is under options. Under general, this was defaulting to Windows Server 2012. And we do want to change this to Hyper-V. It is unsupported, so you can't call them for help. We don't have a support contract anyway, so it'd be hard to call them anyway. But anyway, so clicking OK. So that should enable all the virtualization things we need to install Hyper-V on our server. So I'm going to power on our server. And you just follow along and take notes the first time, and that'll kind of take a break, kind of let you get caught up to that point, and then I'll do another section. But I'll kind of show you a clump at a time. Okay, I'm going to log on to my server. Make it full screen. And then I want to install the Hyper-V role on the server. To do that, I can click right up here, add roles and features. And it's just the standard first screen. The second screen, role-based feature I'm installing. And then where I'm going to install this to, I only have the one server in my server pool right now. If you have the other servers, make sure that you're choosing your 2012-1 server. I want to install off my role list the Hyper-V role. And if all goes well, you should get this. This is usually the part where it's going to fail if one of those other options was not set previously. It's going to say it doesn't support virtualization on the system. So this is a good sign. It's going to add the additional features. And then if you want to choose something else, you could. I'm going to click next. Additional features, no additional features, so I click next. And then I click next again. Now it comes into, okay, in the virtual world, it's going to create a virtual switch. And it's going to say, you know, that virtual switch should connect to something physical. So I'm just going to draw this quickly up here. So it's going to create a virtual world. We're going to create a new server on here, 2012-VM, and we're going to want to plug it into a switch. Now this is going to be a virtual switch. And that's fine if you just want to keep it in this pretend world, but you're probably going to want to link this to some kind of physical NIC, so that you can actually get that server out on the network. And that's what this step is doing. So I'm going to connect that virtual switch to this physical, but we realize that's actually a VMware virtual switch, NIC, but it thinks it's a physical NIC. And then we click next. I don't know how far we really need to get into this part. I'm going to allow this server to send and receive live migrations of virtual machines. It's basically saying it's going to allow communication between virtual machines. We're not going to get into migrations. Even this whole class, even when you get into server 2, they really don't get into the real deep management of it. It's creating virtual machines and starting and stopping them, and that's about it. Go ahead and check that box. These, you leave the defaults for virtual hard disks. Kind of keep track of where they are. Write them down sort of in documentation. they're in two different locations. It's going to create the virtual machine. I'm sorry, it's going to create the virtual machines by default underneath Program Data, Microsoft Windows Hyper-V. It's going to do the associated hard drives with those in a completely different folder. They're going to be in Users, Public Documents, Hyper-V, Virtual Disk, Hard Disks. So you can change these. You can put them in the same folder or at least something more in common. I'm leaving the defaults just for the sake that they're defaults. I don't usually do it this way. I'll usually create a D drive. We have a data volume on there. Call them, virtual machines, and then underneath there, maybe split them between the virtual hard drives and the virtual machines. But right now they're in completely different paths. So kind of take a note, so if you want to go back to them, you can kind of remember. Clicking next, it does want to restart your server. At least it did for me in prior applications of this. And so if it needs to, it's going to restart. If not, that's okay. It's not going to restart. And then I click install. So this does take a couple minutes, and it does reboot. So I'll let you sort of get caught up at this point while I pause. So it's going to reboot twice, it looked like, and you come back to the login screen. Oh, login screen. There we go. Log in. And it should come up with a message saying that it was successfully installed. Add role and feature, reconnecting. It did a couple, I don't know what it did, but it says installation succeeded, so I could click close on here. You will have a little number by the flag. It's not going to be highlighted. We don't need to do anything with the notification. I mean, we don't need to do anything. It's just a notification that it's been successful. So you can clear that if you want by clicking the little X. So now we have a Hyper-V installed on our server. So now we can start playing with a couple things. The first thing I want to show, and this was actually part of this is enabled prior to using Hyper-V. It just allows us to do it a little bit more extensively, and that's working purely with virtual hard disks. And I'm going to do this a couple different ways. I'm going to start with the very basic way, which is even available before you have Hyper-V. If I click on the Start button and I go up to the disk management function. And I'm going to maximize this so you can see a little bit better. One thing you can do is go up under Actions, and you can create virtual hard drives. It's not exactly a virtual machine, but it has some virtual features to it. I can create a virtual hard disk. When I click create a virtual hard disk, it doesn't go to that default location when we installed Hyper-V. It told us where the virtual hard drives were going to go. So we can kind of tell where we want it to go. Just to keep things a little bit easier, it's putting it under Administrator's Documents. I want to put it just someplace I can find a little bit easier. So I can put it on my C drive. And then underneath my C drive, I'm going to create a new folder called virtual. I'm going to create virtual machines.
So this is more of a temporary folder, C drive?
Yes, yeah, but we have enough space in there.
C drive, right?
No, this is the physical C drive of your server, which is a virtual hard drive. So this is all in your server 2012, which is a virtual machine itself.
This C drive is?
Yes.
I was thinking this was like our...
No, this is the virtual hard drive. This is the hard drive of this server. And yeah, it gets really confusing, doesn't it? And think of going 3 layers deep. Now, what C drive am I pointing to?
I know, right? Computer forms.
Yeah, so I'm going to make...
It's like a... Yeah, it's an OS within an OS.
It's kind of like playing, like, oh, I don't know, Mario within Minecraft. You know, it's like, you know, build a little Minecraft world, but in that Minecraft world, they're going to play Mario Kart. So...
Have you seen Inception?
I have not.
You should definitely watch it.
It's a movie or a TV show, or?
It's a movie.
Okay. That...
Very good. I think you'd appreciate it.
Okay. I'm recording. I guess I should keep going since I'm recording. I'm going to make 2 new folders under virtual machines. And this is just, I'm just throwing stuff out there. This is not how you typically do this, but just to keep track of things. I'm going to make one for VMs, for virtual machines. And then I'm going to make another one for VHDs, for virtual hard drives. So I'm going to make this new virtual hard drive underneath here. And it's just, I'm just throwing files out there. Don't get locked into like, where do I have to create these? I just want to keep track of where I'm putting them. So, and I'm going to call it disk 1. Not very creative. This is called disk 1. Now you have two different formats that you can work with. We have two different formats. VHD is the standard way. It supports virtual hard disks up to 2 terabytes. Okay, back. We have two virtual hard drives. This is the standard traditional one. It works with anything that's backwards compatible for Windows. The VHDX, the XML format, is all the newer things, but it's only supported in Server 2012 and then on up. We'll just keep the standard VHD. And then it doesn't matter what size we make it, because we're going to end up making it dynamically expanding. What dynamically expanding, I'll make it a 1024 megabytes, or just make it, let's see, let me think here. I'm going to make it 500 gigabytes. Well, I don't have that my hard drive. Well, that's okay, because I'm doing dynamically expanding. It grows to its size as data is written to it. That's what we're using so far in our virtual world. So we're going to sort of continue with that. So I click OK, and now it mounts it automatically. So here's a 500 gig hard drive. It looks like it's attached to your computer. It's not configured, so I need to configure this. So I'm going to right click and go to initialize the disk. And it's going to do MBR, master boot record, or GPT. It's under 2 terabytes, so we're going to just stick with MBR. And then once it's initialized, I still can't write anything to it until I make a volume. So I right click, choose make a new simple volume, click next. It's going to use up the whole size of the disk. It's going to assign the drive letter F to it. And I'm going to call this VHD1. Click next and finish, and now it's going to format, and now I have a healthy 500 gigabyte hard drive in my computer, which is not a healthy 500 gig hard drive in my computer. It is a file, and we're going to take a look at it on my C drive under virtual machines. My VHD, I have disk 1. It's 107 meg. It's not 500 gigs because it's set to grow dynamically. If I had kept the option to do fixed disk, it would be a 500 gigabyte file sitting right there, which wouldn't fit because I don't have a 500 gigabyte virtual hard drive out there for the server. So performance is going to be hit, because every time you want to write to a file, it's going to have to add to that file, which, by the way, is itself a virtual file, so it just has to keep compounding of adding and whatever. But it's great for demonstrations and using things. So now it's a regular disk. So if I go to my computer here, I'm going to have an F drive. It says VHD1. It's a disk. I can do anything I want with it. I can put new folders on it. I can put new rich text documents on it. I can copy things from, I don't know, do I have anything on my desktop? I have a very boring computer. I probably don't even have any music, no documents. Okay, bad example. So let's just put more new blank things on there and whatever. So I have all these files on there, and that should have increased maybe my file just, well, these are probably all empty. We'll see what it does. Virtual machines, virtual hard disks. It's not, I mean, we don't even put anything on there. If I copy something with substance on there, it's obviously going to be much, much larger. So anyway, so that's my disk. What you can do then through disk management, though, is I can right click on this and I can say detach this VHD file. And so it's not going to be attached to this computer anymore. It just disappears. Eventually, there it goes. And I click under Windows Explorer. Oh, only once. and I no longer have an F drive. However, my file is still there. All it did was just detach it. Now what's really nice about this is if I put this on a shared volume, you could give other people access to this. So maybe, you know, I'm using Disk Tools right now. I don't know if that's gonna.
So that this one would contain all the same data.
Come on, all the files that are there, and just remounted it, and I didn't want to remount it. Shoot. So detach the virtual hard drive. I didn't want to remount it, but this file is that virtual hard drive. Virtual machines. So what's nice about this, if I put this on a shared disk, you could in fact let somebody else have access to it. What's even nicer is you could put it on a read-only share. So I could properties, and I can make this read-only, and so nobody can make any changes to that file even if they mounted it. There's actually kind of two ways of doing that. One is to go to the physical file and make it read-only, and then when I go up to here into disk management and say actions and attach a VHD, I find my file, disk 1. I can also do it from here. So even if it's a read-writable location, I just want to grab the files off of there so I can make it read-only. But I made it read-only on the file itself, so either way, the person's only going to be able to copy the files off of it. Let us do its mounting here first. Now it's mounted. So I go to my computer. I'll do it twice. Here's my VHD1. Here's these files, and I can't delete it. There's no delete there. If I hit delete, nothing happens. I can't put anything new on there. I can't do any of that stuff, but I can, you know, copy and paste it. You know, so it's kind of neat. You could have a whole bunch of updates on it. You could have maybe for salespeople, it could be a location that they could, you know, get all their new product lists or parts or whatever. So you make a new hard drive just for that. In addition, you can make servers on here. If you could install Windows Server on a virtual hard disk, then you can make it read-only, and then people can use it and access it to be able to, you know, grab information or run something or whatever they're going to do. So we're going to talk a little bit about that later on when we talk about like parent and child virtual machines. That's really what we end up doing. So anyway, that's how we work with it in disk management. With Hyper-V, we've added a couple more tools. So under Tools, I now have a Hyper-V Manager. And it doesn't have a great way of working with disks, but it has some capabilities of disks that Disk Manager does not have. So first of all, you've probably seen, oh, I don't know if you have seen this too many times. If you're working in any of the Windows Server lab sims, they do everything in our Hyper-V. This is the first window you get. You have to click on your server, and then you have to choose your virtual machine off of there. If you've done any of them, this is what you've been in. You can also do, you can work with the disks a little bit as well. So here's where you can do a new virtual disk, a hard disk. And I'll go through the wizard this time and show how the wizard is just a little bit different than creating through disk management. I click next. It defaults to the VHDX file, and I'll just do it that way this time. And then it says fixed size or dynamic, and it defaults to dynamic. And I click next. Where are you going to put this? Now this is where during the install it says, hey, this is where I'm going to put all my disks. I'm just going to move that just because I found it, you know, easier to navigate here. Virtual disks. So I'm selecting that folder, and I'm going to call this disk 2. You want to create a new blank virtual disk. It defaults to 127 gigabytes. The maximum you can go is 64 terabytes. I don't think I'll go that big. Just 127 gigabytes. And then I click finish. Now, it doesn't do anything at this point. There's like no way of even knowing that exists. It's kind of weird that way. You would have to go to your file manager or through disk management and then go to the location. And here's my disk 2. And I could right click on it and say mount or double click on it. So if I mount it and I don't have permission, how did I not have permission to mount it? What am I doing differently? That doesn't make any sense. Let's try disk management. I've done this before. Oh, it found a new disk. It said it mounted. And there's my 127 gig hard drive. I had to initialize it, and now I'm going to make a new volume. I'm going to make it VHD2, just so it keeps some kind of mental picture of it. And now on my local PC, I should have this VHD2. And I still have my VHD1. Here I can grab these files. I'm going to copy them, go to my VHD2, and I should be able to paste them. And so they're going to look and act just like hard drives. I'm going to detach both of them. And then I'm going to show you another feature within the Hyper-V Manager. I can edit the disk. In addition to making new ones, I can edit disks, which I do not have the capability of doing from disk management. So I click next, and it says, find the disk. It's going to go to that one default folder. I'm not using the defaults at the moment, so I need to navigate to my virtual hard drive folder. And I'm going to choose disk 1. And then that's the location. And then it's going to ask you, what do you want to do? The first option is to compact it. The file automatically expands but doesn't shrink. So if I copy 200 gigabytes worth of files on this 500 gigabyte drive, it's going to expand out to 200 gigabytes. Well, I'm going to delete those 200 gigabyte files, and it's going to delete it, but my flexible file, my growing file, is going to stay at 200 gigabytes. Well, that's a lot of disk space that it's using when I'm really not using any of it. Compacting shrinks it, saying, you're not using it, I'm going to bring it all back down. Now, leaving it at the 200 gigabytes, it's already been allocated, so as you write new files, it's going to be faster. It's just going to take up more disk space. So, a lot of times we don't think of compacting it. It's only when you do huge amounts of data stuff that you might want to consider compacting it. The next one is to convert it. Converting it is going to switch between a couple different things, between VHD and VHDX. It'll convert the file format. The second thing it can convert, if you so choose, is between dynamically expanding and fixed. So you know what? I'm using a dynamic one. I really want to make this fixed, so you can use the convert command to convert it to a fixed. Or, man, I love my VHDX file, but this person on Windows Server 2008 wants to use it. They can't because it's VHDX, so I convert it to VHD. So that's what convert does. The next option is to expand. When you expand, it's going to say, okay, the old size is 500 gigs, so I'm going to give you a gig more. I don't know why, but you can expand the virtual hard drive to be a new size. So I'm going to cancel this. I'm not actually going to do this. But that's what you can do under Edit. So that's kind of cool. You can't do that under Disk Management. So you can convert the file format and whether it's expanding or not. And then you can expand the disk and say, hey, I ran out of disk space on my virtual disk. Let me add more room to it. So, okay, the next thing I want to show you is one other feature that's in Hyper-V that's not in disk management, and it's called a differencing disk. So how a differencing disk is going to work, let me see if I can maybe draw this, is you create what's called a parent virtual hard drive, and you're going to put on it everything that you want. So you could put a set of files on there that are going to be set for everybody. And this would be considered the parent. Then you could make children disks or a dependent disk, which is based on that disk. Now the important thing is that this is going to have to be read-only, so that never gets affected. So it's kind of locked. When you create a child disk, it's going to be based on that, and anything that's different is going to be written to this file, so we call child 1, and here's one called child 2. So they're all going to have these base files in there, but say that, you know, that's going to have one file on there, it's going to keep it. The second thing it's going to do, it's going to allow you to delete files from the parent. But it doesn't actually delete the file in the virtual hard drive, it just deletes a reference to it. So you can remove files and add files, and any changes are what's going to be written up to there. Now, as far as data goes, I can't think of a great example for why you do this with data. But, like I said, when you create a virtual machine, I'm creating a new VM, I'm going to create a new hard drive. So say this is server 2012. I'm actually making this a hard drive with server 2012 on it. I then would lock it and make it a parent file. So whatever file that is, it's going to be a VHD, so 2012.VHD, probably VHDX file. And that would then become the parent of other servers. So then I could make, you know, maybe make a domain controller, and then making a DNS server, I don't know, just throwing names out there. And they'd both be pointing to that file. So it's going to be, I have 2 full servers running, but the far majority of the files are sitting on one hard drive. They talk about saving space and being able to implement things very, very quickly. I don't have to reinstall, you know, the whole operating system, because once I link to this, and I have this virtual machine pointing to this hard drive, it's going to look like that full server. So it's going to be faster for deploying, really bad for performance, not the greatest for security as far as, you know, making things stable, because if anything happens to this, the whole thing's going to fail. If anything happens to those connections or links, it kind of falls apart. But it's kind of good for this environment. So we may try it and see how it works within our double virtual layer type thing, but that's kind of the idea. But that's going to be a little bit further on, but that's something we can work with differencing disks. So let me just show the differencing disks itself first, using the examples on my disk 1. And I'm going to go to my Hyper-V Manager, and I'm going to create another new hard disk. And I click Next, and I'll keep VHDX. I don't know. I'll do VHD this time. And I'm going to choose a differencing disk because I think my first one is VHD. All children must have the same format as the parent, and disk 1 was VHD if I'm not mistaken. So I'm going to choose a differencing disk. And I choose Next. Now, what's the location of the disk file that you're going to create? Now, this is the new one. So I'm going to choose my C drive, virtual machines, VHD. No. Yeah. Virtual, that's right. That's the folder. And then the disk is going to be difference 1 disk. I don't know. Specify the virtual hard drive that you want to use as the parent. So I have to browse again. Is disk 1. Now it only showed disk 1 because it's a VHD file, and they have to be, the parent and the child have to be the same. So then I click Open, and then I click Next, and Finish. So I really, let's see, that is a read-only file. Right, okay. So now I have a new disk. No, not data. called differencing disk, and it's only 1 meg in size. I'm going to mount this, and it mounted already. So here's those files. I didn't put anything on it, but I used this as the differencing disk. Now I should be able to put a new folder on there. And I even should be able to like delete this one. So I've made changes, and it didn't change the original disk. The original disk is still there. In fact, it's marked read-only, so you can't even change it. So anything that's written to this disk is going to be the differences for it. So if I click back on virtual machines and then VHD, the file's getting bigger with keeping track of those changes. But the base disk is still there. So I created a new disk, had a ton of files on it without doing anything. But I'm still able to modify and change it. But this disk, why does it say that? I don't know why that's acting weird that way. And here it is. It says I can't mount it, but it is. Did I mark it read only? I certainly hope I did. Oh no, this is the differencing disk. That's the differencing disk. That's right. It's gonna be called the same thing, but it's still a differencing disk. So let me go back and look at the physical disks files. And I don't know if I can mount this while the other one is running. So normally you wouldn't. You'd only be using the differencing disks. So again, using an example of that being a server, you could deploy a new server just like that with no time whatsoever. I'm pointing to that disk, and then I would want to go in and change the computer name. I'd change the IP address and those kinds of things, but it would just be up and running. So here. Before you take a break, I wanted to have you copy a file because it might take a while to upload. So I might as well give you time to work on it. So go back to your C drive. I'll show this to you, so don't actually do it. Kind of mark down the notes or whatever. On your local C drive, I'm going to make another new folder, and I'm going to call it ISO images. Again, not a great place to put it on your C drive. Probably better to put it on your D drive or some other place. But I'm just showing you the process of working with virtual machines. And in here, we're going to need on the server the ISO image of the server software. So now this is going to involve going all the way back to your real physical machine. So this is my real physical machine, and I have ISO images, Windows evaluation. I have Windows Server 2012 R2 evaluation. What I'm going to do is grab this file and drag it over to my server's C drive ISO images folder and let it copy. So I don't know how long it's going to take you, but go ahead and start that copy and then take a break. I'm going to go through the process that I'm creating a virtual machine. I'm going to close this directory. I don't need it open right now. Let me log back in. And we're going to be using the Hyper-V Manager. So I can go to Tools, Hyper-V Manager, and I want to choose my server that it's installed. By the way, the Hyper-V Manager will be able to know which servers has Hyper-V installed. So if you had like 5 different servers installed, had Hyper-V installed, all 5 would show up under here. Then when you clicked on the individual servers, it'd show which machines are on that server. So you might have 5 virtual machines here. Click on server 2012-2 and there'll be 5 more or 10 more there or whatever like that, and you can manage from there. But we're going to keep it really simple and just have one server it's installed on. I'm going to then go to make a new virtual machine. You can go over here on the right hand side, new virtual machine. And I'm going to click next. What I'm going to call my virtual machine, I'm going to name it 2012-VM. And it says you can create the folder or use an existing folder to store the virtual machines. If you don't select a folder, the virtual machine is stored in the default folder stored in the server. So I want to store the virtual machine in a different folder just because of what I'm doing in class. By default, that's perfectly fine location, and most systems are going to look for it there. But just for a couple things I want to demonstrate, I'm going to put it in a different folder. So I'm going to browse. And I'm going to put it on my C drive underneath virtual machines, VMs. So there's nothing underneath here right now. It's a brand new virtual machine. It's been called 2012-VM. When I click next, now it does ask me whether I want to do generation 1 or generation 2. The generation 2 is a new version. It provides support for features such as Secure Boot, SCSI Boot, and Pixie Boot, which is booting from the network adapter. The guest operating system must be running at least Server 2012, which our guest would be. But we're still going to stick with generation 1. It's just the simplest. By the way, a couple terms. We have a host. Host is who's hosting it, so Server 2012-1 is our host. Our guest is who's going to be running on top of it. Those are our virtual machines. So sometimes you'll hear about the terms like host and guest. How much memory do you want to use for the startup? We're going to choose, I'm trying to think if we can get by with a gig. We'll get by with a gig. 1024, so 1 gig of RAM. And which network device are we going to connect to? So we're going to connect to our virtual switch. And then click next. This is going to be kind of important. Our virtual hard disks, by default, is we named the same as our machine name, and it's going to be in VHDX format, which is perfectly fine. But again, just for today's scenario, I'm going to change the location of it. Choose to my virtual machines folder, and then my VHD folder. But I'm going to keep the name the same. Then I'm going to click next. And now it's saying, you know, you can install the operating system later on, which we certainly could. But as long as I'm here, I'm going to install it from a bootable CD-ROM drive. But it's not going to be a physical device. It's going to be the image file or the ISO image. This is where I'm going to browse then to my C drive, to my ISO images folder, to my Server 2012 R2 evaluation ISO image. Remember, all of this stuff is a virtual machine. So it's all on this virtual hard drive. And then I click next. And now it says this is what's configured. So just double check, is this all right? And then you can click finish. So it creates all the adapters. It doesn't turn it on, it just kind of creates everything and pre-installs that CD in a virtual CD-ROM drive. At this point, my server is off and I can turn it on. So I can right click on it and I can click start, or you can click over here and you can click start, you know, all kinds of different ways of starting it. But we want to boot the computer. So I want to boot the computer by clicking start. Now you don't see anything except this little tiny window with an occasional refresh of showing what's going on. So now it says Hyper-V or whatever. It's going to start booting. To get a bigger image, now if you've used the labs, it's like, how did you connect to them? All you did was find the virtual machine you want to connect to and double click on it. And it brings up another window. So by double clicking on it, now you get to see the window of what's going on for that virtual machine. I'm now going to go through the regular install. So I click next, install now. And you've done this all before. This shouldn't be anything new or vastly different. I'm going to choose Standard Edition with a GUI. Choosing Next. And this you're really partial to Server Core, which is fine. I'm going to accept the license terms and click Next. I'm doing the advanced or the custom install, which is installing it on my 127 gig hard drive, which is a virtual file. So it doesn't exist. It's a virtual file, virtual hard disk, which is a file. I click next, and it's going to start this copy. So I'm going to take a break now again, stop the video, let it do its thing, and then kind of let you get caught up to this point as well. Just like installing a regular server, it's going to ask you for a password. We have to use our special complex password. It brings you to the login screen. Using the VMware workstation world, you sent a Control-Delete by doing Control-Alt-Insert. In the Hyper-V world, to send a Control-Alt-Delete, you use Control-Alt-End. So Control-Alt-End sends the Control-Alt-Delete. So yet another thing to remember. If you don't remember that, that's not a big deal. If you click up on top, under Actions, you can send a Control-Delete as well. And it reminds you, I guess, up in front at this top as well. So you can log in, and here's your virtual machine. Do you want to connect to their PCs? Click yes. At this point, this is where you go through the standard configuration, set the time zone, set the IP address, change the computer name. I'm not going to make you do that now or during the exam. The point is, can you just get it running? You're not going to actually configure it doing anything. While it's running, I'm just going to slide this over, off the side a little bit. You can see while it's running of how much memory it's using. It has a little screen on the bottom down here. In fact, I can close this, get it out of the way. You can see how long it's been running. You have checkpoints. Checkpoints are just like VMware Workstation snapshots. They're identical. So at any time, you can take a checkpoint, make a checkpoint, or revert to a checkpoint. It's identical to snapshots if you're familiar with those. You can get specifics about memory, networking, replication, so forth, and that's really not going to matter at this point. But you can see that your CPU is, it's loading up probably Server Manager right now, and yep, that's what it looks like. That's what the CPU is kind of high. After it settles down, this should really level off probably, I don't know, 10, 20% eventually. But it's busy doing all that startup stuff for the first time the server's running. So anyway, the other thing is we didn't give it very much memory, so it's probably doing a lot of swap file things. To shut down the server, I can do shutdown from the menu here. I can right click on here and do turn off or shut down. Turn off is like pulling the plug or the hard reset. Shut down is a nice graceful thing, which is kind of nice. Or I can just double click on it, bring up the little window, and then from here, just doing the regular shutdown process. There's a lot of nice features that Hyper-V has that VMware Workstation does not. VMware is still more commonly used though, but just realize that it is there. One thing for licensing, if you buy the standard edition of Server 2012, it comes by default with 2 virtual machine licenses. So you go out and you purchase 1 server and you actually run 2 VMs off of there. So it's, I don't know, 2 for the price of 1, I guess. It's just kind of built into the price though.
Was like a yearly subscription?
No, I don't think that Server 2012 has gone to that yet. It's still a flat, you just purchase it, and it's a license. In addition, and we didn't get into this a whole lot and it doesn't really matter, you still need client access licenses though. So every computer that connects to those servers needs a license as well. So if you have 50 people, you need 50, they're called CALs, client access licenses. So that's the virtual machine of what you need to know for the final. Since we still have time, we're going to just play and just sort of show you some of that parent-child stuff that's going on. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to delete the virtual machine. Now, if I do this right, I just want to delete all the selected virtual machines. Yes, I do. I want to delete them. It should just delete the virtual machine. It shouldn't delete, and I'm going to find out right now, my virtual hard disk. So if I go to virtual machines, I go to VHD, I still have my 2012 VM, hard drive, hard disk. Now this is where that differencing thing can really come in. So I'm going to mark this as read-only. So I'm going to right-click on there, go to Properties, and choose read-only. And so now nothing can happen to this. So from here, I want to make two differencing disks though. So I'm going to I have this as a parent, and I will make two differencing disks. So I'm going to go to the VM manager, and I'm going to make a new virtual hard disk, or hard disk I should say. And click next. It's going to be VHDX because that's what my parent was. And it's going to be a differencing disk. And I need to make the new name VHD. I'm going to name it 2012-VM1. So virtual machine 1. What am I pointing to? So I want to go back to my parent disk in this case. By the way, this is not on the test, so don't stress. So this is my parent disk. And I click next, and I click finish. And I wish there was a place of like showing what I'm working with here, but they don't. And I'm gonna do it again. So I'm gonna make two new hard disks. Exact same process, VHDX, differencing disk. I'm going to browse to my VHD folder, local disk, virtual machines, VHD, and I'm going to call it 2012, oh my numlock is off, 2012-VM2. I want to point to the parent. So that's my 2012 VM. Next and finish. So now I've made two differencing disks. And if I'm looking at them, they're, VM1 and VM2. They're 4 meg each. So they're really, really tiny, where my server is 8 gigabytes. Okay, so now I'm going to make a new virtual machine. I'm going to make a new virtual machine. I'm going to click next, and I'm going to call it 2012-VM2. And I do want to start with my rest of my virtual machines, so it's kind of a hassle clicking all around all the time. So I'm going to select, virtual machines, select it there, and I call it VM. Why do I call it VM2? Call it VM1. Click next. Generation 1 is fine. Memory 1024 for startup memory. I'll connect to my NIC. And now this is the part that's going to say use an existing virtual hard disk. So I'm going to point to the virtual hard disk that I've allocated for this new virtual machine. I'm not going to use the parent one. I'm going to use the VM1 differencing disk. And click next, and then finish. So now I have a VM1. And I can make another one right away, VM2. So another new virtual machine. 2012-VM2. Start with the rest of my virtual machines. Generation 1, 1024 for memory. Connect to my NIC. And again, I'm going to be using my existing virtual hard drive, my second differencing disk, VM2, next, and finish. So I have two servers which I've just created off of one image, and if I start, I should be able to start these right now. So I'm going to start it, and I'm going to start this other one. And so I have both of them started. You can see this one booting. In fact, I should be able to open up both windows at the same time. And okay. Okay, so this is VM2 and this is VM1. My screens are getting a little cluttered. And still, my differencing disks are still really small. They're definitely not 8 gigabytes in size. They will eventually grow because any temporary files are going to be automatically dumped to here. They're not going to be, nothing's being done to this parent disk. But at this point, since I have 2 clean installs, I can make this an IIS server. I could make this a domain controller. I could join the domains or whatever. I could add a third server. I could add a 4th or a 5th or 6th, and they could take up a couple hundred megabytes instead of several gigabytes worth of disk space. And I can log into them, Control Alt Enter into that one, Control Alt Enter into that one. So you can sort of see of how parent and child disks would work in our environment. For production, you wouldn't do this. For production, everybody would have plenty of disk space and plenty of RAM and just sort of build on their own. So. But it's pretty cool of that you can do that. So, questions or comments?